My name is Steve Brummer. I'm a partner with a company called BHIoT Group. We are one of the leading strategy go-to-market BD organizations in the IoT space. Happy to be asked to moderate this awesome panel around the subject that's extremely dear and near to my heart, in the sense that we have to handle this ecosystem and figure out what works, what doesn't, and where we're headed for the next umpteen years in the space. And so the session is called The Era of the Ecosystem. I have some great guys here on this session that have a wealth of knowledge and experience. And the format is going to be very similar to everybody else's, where we are not doing any formal presentation. We'll introduce each other. We'll have an opening statement, and then we'll get into a series of questions that I have for the panel, and we'll go round robin and have a great conversation. If you in the audience have any questions that you would like to ask anybody, there's a Q&A area right there. Just type it in. We'll all get a chance to see it, and we'll all respond and go from there. So we want to make this as interactive as possible. So without any further ado, why don't we go ahead and introduce each other. So Neil, why don't you go first?
Sounds great. So I'm Neil Hamser here. I'm from PTC, one of the leading IoT platforms out there with ThingWorx. I'm the technical lead for our partners. So across GSIs, technology partners, cloud partners, I support the team and technology, working with product managers and the partners themselves to bring everything together.
Excellent. Prashanth?
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Prashant Adiraju. I'm the principal partner leader in the AWS partner organization. And in my role at AWS, I lead a team of solution specialists, responsible for development of a network of partners and executing go-to-market programs around our AWS IoT services. And essentially, it's all to help startups and large enterprises modernize their businesses across commercial, industrial, and smart homes kind of spaces. And I've helped launch new services, and I've also helped develop partnerships with the wide range of partner types: silicon partners, OEMs, connectivity partners, ISVs, and also system integrators with a lot of practices.
Excellent.
Happy to be here.
Thank you so much. Rick?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Rick Lisa. I'm with Intel. I'm responsible for our digital transformation and smart infrastructure business development activities here in the North America market. I work across all industries and all application segments, and also very deeply involved with advancing our partner ecosystem into those opportunities, and work across our ISVs, our cloud service provider partners, our ODM and OEM partners, as well as our integrator partners, global, national, and operational technology focus. So excited for the conversation today.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Some of the things that are kind of pet peeves for me within our industry going forward is that we are doing a pretty lousy job of educating the people within the ecosystem on how to work together. And that education goes from all parts and pieces of the ecosystem. And you also, how a systems integrator, if they are to own the end-to-end deliverable for a customer, how are they being educated on all the pieces and parts? What's their knowledge? Who is the call that you need to make in the middle of the night? Who's that going to? And so I want to start off this session with the basic question, because all of us have talked to people about the ecosystems of today and have got so many different answers. So I want to ask, an easy question. How do you define ecosystem? What does it mean to you? So Neil, why don't you go first and answer, or give me your thoughts on.
Yeah. So I think for an ecosystem, the primary components for us would be, various technology suppliers, which we would be one of those suppliers of technology with our ThingWorx and CapWorx solutions. We need to have an integrator. Oftentimes that integrator for us needs to have some kind of OT experience as well in the manufacturing environment. And then I think what you also need to have is, for us, a cloud partner. We need to have, and then hardware. I mean, it's the full gamut sensors sometimes come into it. Sometimes we're just talking compute. And the problem, I think, what happens is it's different. There isn't a ecosystem that's going to answer everybody's problem, because even though the IoT problems for manufacturing are relatively the same, the way you solve them at a details level varies a lot from customer to customer. So it's really important that you don't have one person, one company in each one of those categories. Like, you kind of need to have a collection of partners that fill out hardware, cloud, sensors, SIs. They all have to be to meet the needs. So that's, not the most robust definition, but it's the definition we work with.
Okay. Next, who wants to answer the question next?
Yeah, Steve, I think I like to maybe think of it, very similar to what Neil said, but think of it as a network of partners. That's essentially how we've even named our organization, as the AWS Partner Network. But I want to sort of raise 2 points, right? One is more of a customer view of things. Customers are trying to reinvent themselves, right? And it's hard to build a business that lasts many years. And you're going to have to keep reinventing yourself multiple times. And to do this, right, you have to have certain ingredients, right? It's all about speed. It's about reducing the complexity. It's about solving these problems. And if you want to transform your business, and if you're looking to optimize this at speed and try to optimize for talent, for complexity reduction, you've got to have a network of partners. And that network of partners starts from, what I like to describe more as the edge to outcome value chain, which is everyone from silicon partners, OEMs making hardware. You've got edge connectivity you got to think about. You got to think about connectivity itself. You got to think about applications. And you've got to think about system integration, right? And that sort of is the definition. And there's an aspect of a network effect between these partners that a customer would need if they have to reinvent themselves. And that's sort of the simpler definition.
Rick?
Yep. Yeah, great question. And, I think we're not tremendously different than Neil or Prashant, in the way they've described it. But I think, what we started was a journey about 4 years ago, where we started looking at the ecosystem in 4 major buckets, or at least our partner base in four basic buckets. Because, at the end of the day, if you're an end user building a factory, you're not going to buy chips from Intel to do that, right? So our value as an ingredient component supplier is the lowest, is at a low point of essentially the totem pole, so to speak, in the value delivery to an end user. So we started looking at the market through the eyes of what are the ingredient technologies or ingredient components you need in order to build up an end user solution. So think of that as sort of the pile of puzzle pieces that you dump out of the box. What's all the pieces? And so we looked across, as I said before, the hardware partners, the software partners, the service providers, and the integrators, and the channels, by the way, the whole supply logistics and supply chain element of this as well. And we said, okay, so these are all the ingredients, and we define an ingredient as, by itself, it does nothing, right? And so, Kepware and PTC ThingWorx, as great as they are by themselves, are not a solution. Right. AWS, by itself is not a solution. So what we said was, okay, next level up, you need all those system vendors. Who's going to start putting the puzzle pieces together in a way that people can actually build on top of it? And then above that, you need the solution partners. You need the people that actually do all the finishing touches, because to the point Neil made, while factory problems one to the next can be commonly articulated, they're snowflakes in the end of the day, because no 2 factories, for example, are identical. So you need the solutions partners, the integrators, who are then going to go do the last mile customization of the systems and the ingredients to get them into the market, and then the end user. And so that's sort of the finishing of the puzzle itself. And then the customer deploys that puzzle into their business. So we actually now, because we've reversed the flow, as we were talking about earlier, about starting with the problem statement as opposed to technology, what we're doing is we're actually letting we're making the customer, the end user, part of our ecosystem in terms of informing what the solutions capabilities, systems capabilities, and ingredient capabilities need to be. And we've documented that across the whole, essentially, value chain that delivers an end user finished puzzle that they can deploy right into their business.
Yeah. Just something I wanted, Rick, that you called out there is the customer. Like, that's something that wasn't traditionally part of the definition. I think that's really, we rarely go into customers that have nothing, that don't already bring something that they need part of that end solution, whether it be they have their own development teams that are going to own a part of it, or they have an existing home built or already existing solution that we have to integrate into. That so I mean, that customer is being part of the ecosystem in a meaningful way is very true. We see in a lot of our implementations, and particularly the successful ones, where there's a strong sense of complete ownership, that it's not a solution they bought, but a solution they own and actually feel an ownership for.
Yeah, along those lines, Neil, there is no customer. I mean, again, no customer wants to experience rip and replace if they don't have to.
Yeah.
So, they have partners already they're working with. They've already made decisions. We're not there to reinvent their entire business. We're there to help grow from where they are to the next stage. And in doing so, we need to understand where they are and what their start points are, and then how we seamlessly marry into that and then evolve that over time to the latest and greatest technologies down the roadmap. So it's avoid the rip and replace, but integrate the customer to the decision. So you're not turning their built environment upside down, but then you're providing them the greenfield opportunities to land and expand, so to speak, when it comes to technology implementation in their business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you see the vertical market segmentation as being a big challenge to us around the ecosystem? Meaning that, Rick, when you look at the partners that you're talking to, I mean, are they all siloed into specific vertical markets so that they are educated within those markets and the ecosystems around those markets so they deliver the best value to the end user?
Yeah, it's a great question. About a year ago, less than a year ago, our leadership came to the conclusion that there is rich value in the domain expertise of aligned vertical industry partners, and that we need to make sure that we're extracting that knowledge. But technology in a lot of the applications, like smart building, for example, is a horizontal technology. It's not purely vertical. So, we've looked at what are those horizontal elements that essentially go across all the industries, and then how do you educate each industry to lift those horizontal technologies appropriately into each vertical. So there's a marriage of sort of horizontal domain expertise and technologies and applications that can be lifted vertically into end user use case deployments when you educate the market on how to apply technology and horizontal capabilities into vertical industries. So we're actually combining those two things. It's not an easy venture, but again, the more we organize our ecosystem to operate in similar manners of thinking and in taxonomy, I think the faster we start taking this Rubik's Cube of capability and we start making sense of it.
Prashant, how do you?
Yeah, I think this network effect of partners has to be verticalized. Like, again, let's go back to, if I'm an automotive customer and I'm looking to modernize my paint shop, I want to improve paint quality, right? That's a very vertical specific domain knowledge that either a software provider today in that business has, or there are already system integrators that do this well for that automotive OEM. Now it's about upskilling them with some of these modern technologies like IoT, ML, AI, and edge technologies, which many of the horizontal technology providers do. And I think that's where the synergies come in, because we can then apply these technologies to those providers and they can go solve real customer problems. So unless this network is verticalized, yeah, this customer journey can be successful.
Neil, what do you think? I mean, I know PTC is kind of verticalized, so
we are verticalized, but we're not verticalized in the sense that we basically break our IoT business into two components: manufacturing, or smart connected operation, and smart connected products. I think we see there's a big divide in the IoT. They're just, those are two very different problems. I think when you start digging into manufacturing, you find there's a lot more simulation between discrete and process than there is different, particularly at the layer we play at. We're horizontal across discrete and process. I think we're horizontal across smart connected product space. Do we have some stuff that we added simply because med device needs that? Yes. Do we have stuff that we've added in manufacturing because it's definitely more of a discrete feature where our background isn't discrete as a company. Yes, but I think having partners, like going back to the ecosystem, that you can count on because they have that automotive experience, or count on because they know, they make the best fluid sensor, or they have proof points in the industry. I think it's really important. I think we're finding the end customers carry, about the very severe verticalization. I think from an ecosystem standpoint, we try to be a little bit more horizontal and just understand and play with partners that can maybe span a couple different verticals. There's a cost for every partnership to make it a meaningful partnership. So we really try to pick ones that can actually check off multiple verticals for us, versus ones that are kind of maybe more niche to a single vertical.
Yeah, Steve, there's a really good example of what Neil just said, and again, tying back to Prashant's discussion as well. It probably happened about 2 years ago. It was probably the most impactful thing that's ever happened to me in this whole discussion around deploying, smart infrastructure with an ecosystem. It was at the Smart Building Conference, the IBCon, Intelligent Building Conference in Nashville. And they had a panel of property owners up on the panel talking about technology as applied to the building space. And they said something really interesting as a common voice. Start with your experiences, look at the applications that deploy those experiences and the tools you need to build those applications and the data that you need in order to make sure those experiences and services are meaningful. And below that line, the more time you spend trying to dissect all the different technologies, the more you're actually, probably burning valuable bandwidth. And so what they're basically saying is depend on the ecosystem to bring the most relevant technologies, but the focus of the end user has to be experience, the applications to deploy it, and the data required to build it. And then below that, we have to figure out ways, like with Neil's products and with Prashant's products and offerings, how do we horizontalize those capabilities so that if the building's a hospital, we know how to apply it to a hospital versus a factory versus an oil and gas field versus, a utility. Mm-hmm. And I think, this is where, the horizontal to vertical kind of thought process of enabling technology to be deployable across, the value chain, but then making it, helping deliver the experience and value to the end user is where it really gets driven home.
Yeah, and Neil, I'm going to follow up Rick's comments around the selection process around partners in the specific areas within the ecosystem and what customers have to go through. I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations where we've been brought in as the advisory consulting firm to talk about it, and we go through this selection process of all these pieces and parts of the ecosystem, and oh my God, what a painful experience it sometimes is going through it. So what do you tell customers when they're looking at a selection process for partners within the ecosystem?
So ThingWorx is pretty open from a platform standpoint. So we, whether or not we have a firm partnership with someone or not, we have the ability to interact with a lot of different technologies. One of the ways that we've handled that internally is we've created tooling, what we call solution maps. So, here's a problem we see in manufacturing. Here's the list of partners that we have that you can go propose to the customer to solve that part, whether it be vision analytics or hardware partners, where we actually have something. There's some collateral, there's some messaging we can give to the customer to help make that decision. So that's a way that we're trying to make it a little bit simpler. One of the things that we're really focusing on is trying to remove from that list all the logo trading, Barney partnerships. So if we recommend someone, if we put them as a partner that we've worked with, there's documentation, there's use cases, there's customer success stories that we can point to, versus just saying, here's a list of everyone we kind of had a meeting with and that there's
go figure it out yourself.
And go figure it out yourself. So
classic matchmaking.
We're willing to go help them go figure it out if they pick someone who's not on our list. And that's, always part of the ever expanding ecosystem. But we're making it so our sales guys in the field know who we're working with, know who we actually have meaningful relationships with and partnerships with, and what little niche, because that's one of the big things we have is, the customer talks to the sales guy. They don't always talk to the alliance manager who actually knows the ecosystem. How do we educate the sales guys in what the true ever-changing ecosystem is, and how do they get the more information? So the customer obviously has a lot of work to do on their part. We need to make it as simple as possible by bringing, these solutions. Here's our list of SI partners that are good. Here's the in your space. But, it's can we educate our sales force to have those discussions? And that can help eliminate a lot of headache, at least down the line.
Yep. Prashant, any comments around the selection process?
Yeah, look, I think the selection process ultimately is about the customer choice, right? Even if I go back to that automotive OEM example, if you're able to bring a network of partners, and as long as all of these partner technologies are open and can work well with each other, then speed is going to happen. Because if you're trying to build something very closed, non-standard, yeah, sure, you can build it. That's a choice you make. But it's going to be hard to scale. Technology evolves. It's going to be hard to keep up to speed on things like that. So, yeah, I think my view goes back to that whole verticalization and trying to be very open and making the technologies work well with each other. Because in the automotive example, again, you've got a partner that really knows that business. How do we enable and upskill that partner with technologies? It could be horizontal technologies like pure edge connectivity or edge technologies or platforms, cloud solutions. Yeah, that's how this whole thing needs to come together.
Excellent. One of the things that's another, for me, in some of the speeches that I give around the world, I look at the ultimate growth of IoT. If we're ever going to get to the big numbers, it's going to come from the SMB markets, those mid-tier, smaller firms that are doing work in this space. Listen, all of us on the screen right now on this panel have dealt with large corporate enterprises and corporate, Fortune 2000 companies and done IoT deals. But, what about that family farmer versus the corporate farmer? What about that small contract manufacturer that wants to be automated versus a huge, a Ford situation? So my question around the ecosystem and the SMB markets, how do we address that? How do we trust them? How do we educate them? How do we know that they will, in front of the customer, represent our products and our service offerings in the best possible manner?
Yeah.
Whoever wants to start that one.
Sure. Go ahead. Prashant.
Good.
Prashant, go.
Sorry. Yeah. No, I think, Steve, this is an interesting point, because this is about a lot to do with skill set and builder versus buyer, right? I mean, if you're an SMB, like you described, many of those profiles, they're in the business of, let's say, farming, or they're in the business of, let's say, managing a renewable energy farm. That's their business, and they know that business very well, and they're looking to modernize that business, right? So in my view, this network of partners need to be able to solve that business problem of that customer. And this is where a solution and package mindset, I think Rick talked about it early on, how do we really package this up so it looks like a solution to a business problem, right? Rather than a technology for the sake of technology. I think that's what this network of partners need to address. And I think it becomes even more important in the SMB space. Yeah, Rick, back to you.
Yeah, thanks. No, I think I agree with Prashant that, there's this issue of scale. I mean, I think solutions need to be scalable. A small and medium business can't afford what a large or mega business can afford. So solutions need to be able to scale. They need to be able to scale down and scale up, and they need to be able to scale over time. We had examples of, small and medium businesses that came in with a very small problem set. And so we needed to be able to scale the solutions to meet that requirement. And scale is a twofold problem. It's not just that the technology itself scales, but that the coverage of that account scales. So, the biggest problem is how do you take a 5,000 person sales organization as Intel has but then scale it down to the millions and millions of companies that are in the US. And that's about reach. So to your point before, Steve, you got to educate the channel, you got to educate the ecosystem, you got to give them the tools to be independently capable of deploying these resources and solutions to the market. But then the cost needs to be scaled. You need to be able to scale it from a price standpoint, and the technology has to be able to scale. How do I take something from a very small footprint, but as my business grows, grow that over time? Or if I have large businesses that have very small problems, how do I not put them into the big footprint? So scale is a big part of it. But I think education, when you start talking small and medium business, we have to build the ability of our integrators, our channels, our partners, whether they be software services or hardware, they all have to be able to tell the story the same way and have that ability to scale not only to size but to cost, and give that solution to partners, as Prashant said. As it becomes, interestingly enough, when you follow that path, the solutions become more and more packaged over time, and the institutional knowledge of how to deploy it becomes more and more packaged and more standardized. If you go back to the computing industry in the late 80s, it was a wild, wild west in terms of technologies and architectures, but now it's highly standardized. And I think, over time, even though the industrial space is still highly fragmented, I think over time, process and method can be more standardized, whereas we still will always have that sort of unique environment in each facility or each business that has to be addressed. And again, back to scale.
Yeah, I think just to build on what you're saying there, I think firmly agree. I mean, for us at BTC, we really count on those channel and particularly our small resellers / SIs, the regional SIs that have the OT experience to go talk to those one factory, that one plant manufacturers, the guys who make a smart connected product. They only make in some of our cases what we call machine builders. They only may make 10 units a year, but these are $1 million units that they want to be IoT'd. So there's, they have a very strong use case. They have a really strong value, but we're talking, in the lifetime, 1,000 connected units, but at $3 or $5 million a piece for the unit, that's a really big, meaningful impact for them. So we've done a lot and continue to kind of build into retraining. It's the continuous drumbeat and consistency. And we've done a lot recently, actually, to make sure that when we're designing new products and introducing new products and the ecosystem, that the ecosystem is part of that. So we understand consistency of message throughout. Because it every time we introduce something new, whether it be, probably for AWS, a new service, a new software product, it's a whole bunch of noise we make, and we have to make sure we put that in the framework for the channel and resellers so they can continue doing the business we need them to do in order for us to grow and not get lost in some of the noise that we tend to make about this is the new shiniest thing.
I think there's another element to what Neil's raising as well, which is this idea of, the intelligent edge. As you build smart products, the edge becomes smarter and smarter. And I think, AWS is doing interesting things and providing not only, their hybrid cloud, hyperscaler services, but they're also figuring ways in order to make those services available on a distributed edge, in terms of actually allowing the same services you would deploy in a public hosted or hybrid or private cloud environment, that you can also essentially build those same cloud-like services on the edge. And so that, again, is another example of how scale is happening, where we're scaling it down to the needs of an individual user, but scaling it up, to meet the needs of a broad audience. And those types of innovations, like Amazon's doing, are critical to enabling, the broad distribution of technology to a very large base of consuming customers.
Question from the audience. Yes, we have been getting them. So, but this is the one that I really wanted to ask all along was, isn't this ecosystem discussion that we're talking about, isn't the ecosystem kind of anti-competitive?
That's a great, great observation. Yeah,
it's a great question.
One thing that's interesting, and I think we've kind of danced around this on, the quote unquote selection process. I think the selection process starts with the end user. It starts with the customer. I mean, every customer has already made, partnered selections or vendor selections. So we just can't throw those away every time we step in front of a customer. So what we're trying to do is go through this process of evaluation. What is the customer's capability, whether it be in data acquisition or security or networking and communications or analytics or cloud and compute. You start looking at all the different capabilities a customer has to have. We actually try to understand where they are in that journey. And then what we do is we then look at where they feel strong and we build on that strength, but where they feel like they're gapped or weak, we make recommendations as to who the available parties are to support that. And then based on the information provided by those other parties, we're able to give the customer the ability to then go through and interview those parties and to have dialogue with those parties in a meaningful way to get to a rapid selection process. So I think our approach is actually to throw open to the customer what all the options are, but then give them some art of the possible dialogue that they can have with each of those different vendors in order to make partnered selections or to make technology or supplier selections. So we throw it wide open. I don't think that a coalition of partners helping the industry understand how to consume technology limits competition. In my view, it opens broadly the opportunity for competition. And what it comes down to is how each company articulates its value into that value structure.
Yeah, I guess I would add to that too is we're not tend to partner with companies that we directly 100% compete with. I mean, we overlap with Microsoft, with AWS. There's definitely overlap with some of our technology, but it's 80-20, probably more like 95-5, where the 5% is the overlap. So from PTC, you are going to buy an IoT platform or Kepler, an industrial web protocol adapter. That's great. We'll sell you that all day long. We're not going to sell you any hardware from Intel. We're not going to sell you, the open cloud. We can sell you our software hosted on a cloud. So you're going to have to go buy that stuff anyways. We're just trying to give you a path of getting there that is going to reduce and remove as many barriers as possible. And so you don't have to do it yourself. I mean, I think from similar to what you were saying, Rick, I think because we're working together, we're actually probably making it so you're more likely to go buy a little bit more from everybody than you are going to have to if you slowly have to figure it out customer and figure it out on your own. And the nature of it is there's naturally going to be some cooperation between partners, especially these bigger companies like that overlap. Yeah. But that has to be managed by the business, but I don't think it actually negatively hurts the customer. I think it actually probably makes for the customer actually a little bit better as we start to prove out the capabilities of our products and making them having to stand up against each other even a little bit more.
Prashant, any comments around the anti-competitiveness of an ecosystem?
No, look, I look at it from a standpoint of being very customer driven. I think we touched upon those points. I think if you're trying to be very customer focused, we look at it as a network of partners, right? It's about the sum of all parts to go solve what the customers are. They are really looking to reimagine their business, reinvent their business. Go back to the auto example. They want to create a modernized paint shop. Hey, you need a network of partners to go solve that problem, right? And I think it's that piece that coming together makes it very customer driven. I think that's how we see it.
Yeah. We have about 5-6 minutes left, so I wanted to get two quick things in. One of the areas that we focus in as a company when we're dealing with clients is around where does your product fit into the ecosystem, and so how will it be sold in and through the ecosystem? Because most of these products companies, whether they're building a physical hardware piece or a software piece, are not going to provide the end-to-end solution. So they need to build their product to fit into the ecosystem. How much of that are you guys recommending and talking to potential partners or builders or makers of things?
For us, So actually, right now, as we're starting a bunch of new development at PTC over the last year and a half, thinking about the partner technology up front, making it so that our new solutions have off-road ramps for partners, making sure that we have those APIs we need to connect to the partners' technology, being more both just prescriptive in the partners we want to work with, but also making it so we can actually work with other partners that we don't have visibility to right now is a huge thing we're trying to design into our products today. Because that's not always been something we've been particularly strong with. The history is, yes, we said you could do it, but we didn't design it into our new solutions where we, not all the data may be coming from PTC. The data may be coming someplace else. The analytics may be coming someplace else. So there's a lot we've been doing recently to re-engineer that so that it's, a first party part of the architecture is partner technology, both being prescriptive, saying you should use this partner, or if you have this use case, as well as just being here are the off-road ramps for plug in your analytics solution of choice, and we'll be able to use it and display it, and it'll fit into our application.
Prashant?
Yeah, look, I'll leave you with this sort of the vision we think about this, right? We're saying, okay, hey, in the next 10 to 20 years, it's most likely that companies' on-premises footprint will not be server, they'll all be virtually in the cloud. But then the whole on-premises footprint will be connected devices, and that's where the edge becomes important, right? But when you take all these billions of connected devices, there's going to be sensors which are already everywhere. They're very small, and that's where the cloud becomes disproportionately important. But if I'm a developer, I want the same single pane of glass because I'm trying to write an application, decide to bring the data in, process it, and then drive inference at the edge, right? So I want the same programming interface. I want to make it easy to collect data. I want to securely bring this data. I want to run large-scale analytics. I want to pick the right algorithm, deciding on what device I want to run it. So that's essentially what we're trying to do at AWS, right? Create this infrastructure, whether you're trying to connect a light switch and make it voice-enabled, or go improve paint shop quality, or try to do this, in a renewable space. So that's sort of the underlying infrastructure that we're trying to create to make it easier.
Rick?
Yeah, I think when you look at where we sit in the structure, as I said earlier, nobody really just buys a chip to solve a problem. So we actually are working on the enabling, right? And I think Intel is a foundational enabler of a lot of the technology that people will apply to this, whether it's an application enablement platform provided by Neil, or it's a cloud service provided by Prashant, or whether it's a networking technology provided by a Cisco or a Huawei or whomever. I think that when you go look at this, the idea is, how do you get the customer comfortable with using these various ingredients and technologies? And the real opportunity for scale is in making it possible for the customer to be intelligent on deploying and using these technologies together with their integrator community in a way that matters to their business. If Intel does its job right, we're going to encourage customers to use scalable technologies that go from industrial PCs to cloud mainframes, and that compute continuum and data continuum and network continuum is basically seen as a tool to solve, problems. Now, as Prashant will say, and Neil can attest, whether they run that on an AMD processor or an Intel processor, or even, dare I say, an ARM processor, that's going to be about the design for the customer. It's what makes sense to the customer. And so, if we do our job right, we will probably, continue to influence a lot of technology decisions over the long haul. But we're also enabling a whole technology environment by making the customer more intelligent on how to consume it. And I think that's been our focus, is making the customer intelligent. And by way of that, are we doing things in our roadmap from a technology standpoint? Sure. But at the end of the day, it's about getting the customer intelligent on how to use it.
Excellent. Well, we've come to the end of our time today, and it's been a wonderful panel. Thank you guys so much for participating in it. I will tell you, in closing, the era of the ecosystem is definitely here. It's been here, but the era has changed in the sense that today more than ever, we need to be able to manage the ecosystem from end to end in order to provide value and solve the problems that our customers have. And that ecosystem involves a lot of players and a lot of parts. And you have to be a really good manager of all those pieces and understand them. You got to educate yourself. One of the questions was, and this is pretty funny, is that, where do you go to college to become an expert on ecosystem or being a systems integrator? There's no degree that I've found about being a systems integrator, but I know that if I could take some of Rick's money and invest it, I would become a systems integrator, because it is the place where the ecosystem resides. That they are the ones that are the throat to choke and the responsibility. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. You can obviously get a hold of any of us from the speakers area on the website. Continue to go to all the sessions today and tomorrow. I think this is Transform 2021 is better than last year, and it's got some great opportunities to learn more, because we all have to continue to educate ourselves. So again, this is Steve Brummer signing off from the panel on Era of the Ecosystem. Thanks everybody for joining us. Have a great and wonderful day.